Okay, so any questions so far? Does everybody feel like they're moving along okay with their projects? And they feel pretty good about ANOVA, t-test, and z-test are enough to kind of feel like you'll be okay in general. Um, if you have more questions or if you want to meet with either myself or Danielle, we'd both be happy to meet. Just send me an email and we can send up a time, or send Danielle an email as well. We'd be happy to help. Um, I can look over um, rough drafts, but it'd have to be by Tuesday. And even then, it's going to be hard for me to get through in detail, but I can at least go through and give kind of a general look at kind of how it's going and stuff. If I do look over your papers, what I'll probably do is I might say, this section is not like proper APA style, or you didn't cite this right. But then you need to make sure that you generalize that to the rest of your paper, because I'm not going to say, if you're having a problem with something in APA style, I'm not going to kind of say every time you have that problem. I'll say it once, and then you need to make sure to generalize that to the rest of your paper. Most of the papers should primarily be about developing the concepts and kind of the theory behind the hypothesis that you're looking at, as well as digging into that to whatever statistic that you're using. And then the results section should kind of really follow what we were doing earlier in terms of t-tests and z-tests and so on and so forth. And so you should just follow your APA style, use your APA manual. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but you should have an APA manual on your desk when you're writing this paper. I mean, that is what I do. That is what everybody I know does. Like, no one is expecting you to know this off the top of your head, but you are expected to have a book nearby you and checking your work to make sure that you are doing it correctly. So any questions so far? Danielle, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I've had a couple meetings with students prior to Thanksgiving, and I felt like those went well, just kind of going over the outline and expectations, things like that. So I think now any kind of meeting that we do have would be a good time to kind of like have us double check their analyses, right?
Yeah.
Or ask like APA questions and things like that if they, are confused about something maybe in the APA manual, or just like in general, because the way this paper is going to be outlined is obviously focusing on like what you guys learned in stats this semester. So it's slightly different than, say, your research methods paper. But yeah.
Leo just asked if we do the latest version of APA format. No, I mean, you can do, I don't know, I think, is it 6th or, I mean,
We're on 7 now.
Oh, 7. So you can use 6 or 7. I will not be distinguishing between the two.
Okay. That's
So
good
the
for me
big
to know
thing,
too.
yeah, the big thing that I find with APA style is the main thing that I'm wanting to see is that the references are done correctly. Your reference list is done correctly. The title page is done correctly. Like, those are more of the things that I tend to be looking at. There are differences I've heard with the 7th edition, and I'm nothing that I've heard is something that I'm as worried about at this stage for you all to get your papers done. Any other questions that you have so far? One thing that I was kind of thinking about, for those of you who are taking experimental psychology next semester, I'm not sure exactly what Dr. Lake is going to use as far as doing the statistical analysis, but if you want to do it in R, I'll be happy to help. So as you're working on your projects, once you have your data collected, if you want me to help and go over that with you, I'd be happy to do that. Also, make sure to save when you do your data. See, when you do your data analysis on this, make sure to save it. Save your code, because I'll need to look at that if I'm going to help you with and make sure the data analysis is working. Okay, I've got one. I need 1 second here. I'll be right back.
Okay. So I guess to expand on what he was saying about saving your code, the best way to do that is going to be to create and save a script within R. However, if you don't feel comfortable with that, or if there's troubleshooting or anything like that, you could always copy and paste onto a Word document. Worst case scenario, I suppose a picture could be used, but I wouldn't recommend it, because at least in a Word document, you can copy and paste that back into R, right? If it's a picture, then you're just going to end up doubling your time if you're just having to retype something in. So keep that in mind too. Has anybody, trying to think how to word this. Yeah, has anybody not started their analysis yet for their papers or projects?
I haven't yet, but I wanted to make a meeting to talk to you about that. I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but I did have questions on how I should do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and shoot me an email.
Okay.
Okay, DJ is going to start today. Sounds good. I know like last week wasn't like a full week in terms of, you know, schoolwork. At least I would think not, because of Thanksgiving. But I mean, I don't know everybody's situation. If, you know, you guys ended up, you know, being social distance and whatnot, maybe you had more time, but either way. But James, do we have a due date for everyone for the paper?
For which?
For the project.
Thursday by midnight. Both the long version, both the long answer version of the exam and the paper are due Thursday by midnight. And then the multiple choice exam is due by midnight Friday.
Okay. So we're talking December 10th.
Let's see, I believe, yes.
A week from today.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
paper and long answer due the 10th, and then multiple choice is due the 11th.
Okay.
Because and the exams will be open on Tuesday. And actually, I can go ahead, if persons want me to, I can go ahead and open those exams. I can probably open them tomorrow. Why don't I just go, I'll go ahead and open the exams tomorrow, and then that'll give you a little bit a larger window.
So that includes multiple choice and long answer.
Yeah, multiple choice is ready, and then we got the long answer one ready as well, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just get those posted tomorrow.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, for timing, the long answer exams are not timed. The multiple choice is timed, and I think it's 70 minutes for the multiple choice. So it's about 1.5 minutes per question.
And I think James already mentioned this, but you guys are going to be focusing on chapters 12 through 15, right? He already talked about z-test, independent t-test, paired t-test, and ANOVA. That means that you're going to have, on the long answer portion, you're going to have one problem per chapter. And the long answer will not tell you guys what specific analysis to use. So you're going to need to make sure that you read each word problem carefully and decipher which analysis is going to best fit those problems. So in that case, be very careful how you interpret the problems that are going to be used for t-tests, because you have to tell the difference between the independent t-test, chapter 13, and the paired t-test, chapter 14. Those are probably the two that are going to be the most challenging to tell apart.
Right. But for the long answer, you do have access to all the notes that we've used, all of the scripts that we've used. I mean, you can use whatever you need to complete it. You can ask us questions as well. I mean, if you run into a problem, feel free to ask us a question. I mean, we can't tell you the answer, but I can direct you towards things, and we can obviously help in that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on anything so far? Okay, so let me just kind of go through the couple things that I wanted to go through.
James, can I ask for one more clarification?
Mm-hmm.
You said on December 10th, the long answer portion is due and the stats project is due.
Mm-hmm.
But then on Friday, the 11th is when the multiple choice is due.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me, oops. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to try to have the chat out as well. So if you have a question in chat, let me know as well. So if you look under Moodle, under this week, there is the R script, which is this kind of R tidbits thing, 12.3.20. And so that's where all these notes are. And then the data set that I'll be using is also posted there as well. So what I want to do is talk about how you create a database. And so I'm going to start by going back and just giving a quick overview of how you create a database, just to kind of remind, because there's two of the problems on the long answer version of your exam are you do have to enter in the database. So you have to enter in the data. And so I'm going to describe a couple ways to do that. So you remember, first, to create an object, you just write what that object is going to be called. And then we have to use the C. So the C is telling R that I'm going to bind these, or I'm going to take these, create these things to this object numbers. So you do C, and then notice when you click the parentheses, it creates the 2. And then in this case, I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So that's a really quick, notice how it pops up here as my object. And then I can also go down here. So it's all set. Now, if we need to do words, notice that words are the same way. So I can do words. And this time I'm going to use the C. But now this time the big thing is I want to use parentheses. So this time 1, and then 2, 3, 4, oops, 5, oops. Okay, there we go. And then we can type in words here again. And it's got it there for us. Okay, so that's the basics that we remember. Now, if we want to create a data frame, we can just take those two objects. Example. I'm sorry, we can create a new object, which I'm just calling example. And then this time we're going to create a data frame. So we just use the data frame command. And then we just include those two objects in there, numbers. Notice how it pops up, numbers and words. Then I can click on that. And then when I write example here, notice how I've got my numbers and I've got my words. Okay, any questions so far? Put space between. Okay, let's see. So Leo asks, will an error pop up if you put a space between on for numbers and the commas between? Can you ask that again, Leo? Not sure. You will. So the proper format is you've got to have a comma between each one, and you have to have the parentheses there. Yes, an error will pop up if you don't have a space between them, or it will just put them together, I believe. So if I go back to that numbers example, I think if I do it like that, yeah. So then it notices the error and then it won't work. Okay, then the other thing we can do here is rather than creating the two objects separately, we can create the objects within the data frame at the same time. And so this is where I can do example. So I'm gonna create this same data frame. And then I can write data frame. And then I can essentially put my, my two objects within it. So if you look up here at this example, right up here, notice I have example and then data frame. And then I just put numbers equal, so that's one object, and then words equal. So when I run this entire thing, oops. Then it gives me the same output. So it just kind of simplifies that. And you can do it either way. It doesn't really, it doesn't change the data set at all. It does about the same thing. Now, any questions on how to do that basic stuff, just as kind of a review? Okay, so then the thing that we didn't go over before is when you have the same number or the same character, you can use what's called the repeat command. And the repeat command basically just, whatever you ask it to repeat, it's going to repeat. So if I say that I want to repeat, so I use the repeat command, and then I want to repeat 1, and then I want to repeat that 5 times. I can enter in the command like that, and it repeats 1 5 times. And I can do the same thing with characters. So I can enter and repeat. This time I want to enter in this word 1, and then I'll put times equals 5. And it does that same thing. Then I can also create an object just like that. So I can do 1 object repeat 1 and then times equals 5. And then you have this object 1 that does the same thing. So why this is helpful is, especially for when you're putting in like a character variable, it can be helpful because then you don't have to write out that word over and over and over again. You can simply just do it. You can tell R how many times you want to repeat each one of those. So, let's see. And then you can also do it for more than one. So if I want to repeat and let's say I want to repeat 1 and 2, I can do that as well. But this time I use this each command. So what it's saying is repeat 1 and 2 and repeat each of those 5 times. So when you click that, I've got 5 1s and 5 2s. And then you could do that for however many you wanted to do. And then the same thing can happen with words. So if I want to repeat, this time I want to repeat, oops, 1, and then I want to repeat 2. I can do the same thing. And then I'll do each equals 5. So then I'm just simply repeating those words 5 times each. And this is really helpful for your nominal variables or for your grouping variables, because sometimes or oftentimes those are going to repeat. And then the nice thing here too is I can create a full data set of this. So I'm looking here at example 3 up here. So I have example 3, and then here's my data frame. And then I'm going to have the numbers variable be this repetition is of 1 and 2s. And then this words variable be a repetition of 1 and 2. So that when I run this, I can create, whoops. Create the same example, example 3, and then that creates a quick little data frame for myself. So any questions there on how to do that? And so you could do, I mean, if the pattern repeats itself like that, so if it's 1, 2, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then repeat each 5, you could do the same thing. So it just does that kind of repeating. Now, the other thing you can do, now look down here, is, so example 4, if you want to do a repeat command for more than one number or character, but what happens if they're different links, meaning that they're not the same number? There's each of the numbers or characters in your vectors has a different number of how many times you need to actually repeat it. Well, you can do that same sort of thing here. So if I want to repeat, and this time I want to repeat 1 and 2, but instead I want to repeat these. I want to repeat 1 4 times, and I want to repeat 2 5 times. I can do that same thing. So notice how this time I have 4 1s and I have 5 2s. So if you have different lengths within your variable of how far, how many times you need to repeat it, you can change that as well. And I can do the same thing with words. So I can just go back here and do the 1 can go back here and do the 2, and it's the same basic command. So then here again, if I look at here at example 4, I can create the entire data frame all in one command. So I can do example 4, data frame. That's going to create the data frame between these two variables. I have numbers, and I want it to be the case that 1 is 4 times. There's 4 1s essentially, and 5 2s. And then for word 1s and 5 word 2s, I can do the same thing here. Thus, when I run this, and then I can check it, and it's the same thing. So I have the number 1, and then I have the word there too. Okay. So any questions there on how to do that? Danielle, does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we're good with repeat. You guys got it? No more questions. You're good to go. Can I get a thumbs up from Oscar, because I can see you there? There you go. Thank you. The one I can see as I'm sharing my screen. Okay.
He's not asleep.
Yes, that was a good thing. Okay, so what I want to do now is talk a little bit about the problem we sometimes run into with SPSS files that we import, and when we're trying to do the ANOVA task. And what happens is the way in which the file gets imported is it's not read well for the ANOVA or for the 2K. And probably not that it may cause problems for the t-test as well. I don't remember if that was the case or not, but anyway, so let me just kind of explain to you how this problem works. Okay, so first off, what I want to do is I'm going to import the puppies data set. And if you remember, when we went over this data set before, we used it for ANOVA, and we were talking about whether or not spending time with a puppy was good therapy and actually helped with your level of happiness. So let me go ahead and import this file first. Okay, so notice when it comes in, I have the person, I have the dose, which is 1, 2, and 3. So this is the dose of the amount of puppies or how much time you have with puppies, and this is the happiness scale. So it looks like a good import. You can click here, and then it brings it up here as well. Okay, so I've imported that just fine. Now, when I look at the puppies here, what I want you to notice is, see where it says dose there, that's the dosage of puppy therapy you have. It's labeled as what's called a double. And what that means is it's got a number and it's got a label for that. So when I type in this particular variable, puppies, and then dose, notice what happens. So I've got my 1s, 2s, and 3s here, and then it's got this label of the control, and then 15 minutes of puppy therapy and 30 minutes of puppy therapy, which at first seems pretty great. But the problem is that for whatever reason, ANOVA and 2K don't work as well, or don't work with the way that this is actually set up. And I'll show you why that's the case. So let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's run this ANOVA with the data set as is. So I'll call this puppies ANOVA. And then And remember that happiness is the dependent variable. Oops. Dose is the independent. And then the data that we're looking at is, of course, the puppies data set. Okay,
Can
so
I
I run that.
real quick?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So when you guys are writing code, I've seen a couple different things now. Make sure you're paying attention to when you're going to use the name of the variable by itself. So in this case, when you're running the ANOVA, you have happiness, and then a little squiggle, and then dose, and then you're telling R what data set it's pulling it from, i.e. puppies, right? So in this case, you need to pay attention that we're using just the variable names, right? Whereas a little bit earlier, there was an instance where James did use, for example, I'm trying to think, if he wanted to type in like example and then $sign and then put in a variable. So there's a difference in like when you want to use the $sign and when you don't. So I've seen a couple
I think
variations.
you can actually do it either way. I think you can do it either way.
Well, the problem is that when people have been doing their descriptives data set in order to do their ggplot, if you use the name of the data set and a $sign, it throws off the descriptives.
Yeah.
So there is a difference, at least in descriptives.
Yeah. In the tidyverse data set, yeah, there is a difference. Yeah, that's good to know.
So on that note, I've had a couple people, I think with the ANOVA quiz, that had an issue with their descriptives data set. I would say if your graph comes out with all the bars even, something's wrong. You can email either one of us and we can try and help you. But look for things that like don't make sense, right? If you have questions during the exam, email us. It's like the equivalent of like raising your hand in class. You know, we can try and help you. So keep that in mind.
Good point. Okay, so when I do summary here of this puppies data set, I'm sorry, the puppy ANOVA, at first it looks good. Like I've got my F value, I've got a P value, this looks significant and everything seemed fine. The problem is in reality, this is not accurate. And the reason you would know that is because the degrees of freedom here is 1. The degrees of freedom should always be 1 less than the number of groups that you have. So the degrees of freedom here should actually be 2 rather than 1. And the reason that is degrees of freedom for this particular, for the ANOVA is always the number of groups minus 1. And so this should actually be a 2. So because it is not a 2, it changes this output and actually gives you an incorrect score. Now, the other way that you can tell this too is when I do the 2K, the 2K doesn't let you do it. So I go to 2K, puppies ANOVA. It shows you that's wrong, gives you a red, gives you a warning label so that you know that it's wrong. Okay, so then the issue is how do we fix this? And actually the fix is pretty easy. So I'm looking here at how do we fix it? And what you do is you change dose to what's called a character variable. A character variable. So you're basically forcing it, you're forcing R to read it as a specific kind of variable. Right now, it is reading it as this double, which is actually pretty fine for the tidyverse, but it isn't good for the ANOVA and for 2K. So the way that we fix this is we use the exact name of the variable. So we'll do puppies. And then we're telling R to change that variable to as factor. And we're forcing R to read it as a factor. And a factor is basically another word for either an independent variable or for a grouping variable. So as factor, and I simply write that same variable. And so I click that, and notice what happens. Now, under dose, now it's calling it a factor with 3 levels. And so now it's doing the accurate thing. So now that I've changed that variable, I want to run this code again. So I have to run this puppies ANOVA again. Then once I do my summary, notice how the output changes. So now I have the right degrees of freedom. That's correct. Notice that the F value is slightly smaller, but it's still significant, which is good for us. And so this is giving me the right answer for my ANOVA. And then of course, the real kicker is when I do 2K, and then I do then it gives me my answers. Okay. So questions there on how to do that. Typically what I've seen, the main part that you want to look for this is for SPSS files. It seems like they're the ones that tend to, when they encode stuff into R, they tend to not necessarily encode it as a character variable. CSV files, it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue, at least from what I've seen so far. And this will also be, as you're going through your data sets for your statistics projects, those are all SPSS data sets that I gave you. And so it'll be important to make sure that you have that data correct. And the big thing is just to make sure that your independent variable or your grouping variable is called a factor. As long as you have that, then you're all good to go. Okay, so questions? And I'm sure you're all thinking to yourself, Dr. Van Slyke, this is really easy. I'm an expert in R now. I know all this stuff. I knew this last week. I'm good to go. The only other thing, one other thing I was thinking about, when you're doing your effect sizes, one thing to consider is that effect sizes are always positive, they're never negative. And so even if your formula ends up with a negative for like Cohen's D or whatever it might be, you should write it as a positive integer. Okay, then that's it. That is all I have.
So can I ask a quick question for clarification?
Yes.
You kind of already said this, but just to make sure. So anytime that you create your own data set, even if you do use like the repeat function, you don't really need to worry about the as factor. It's just when you're importing.
Because like when you look here, notice how, like for example 1, it has the ones as a character.
Right.
And for example 3, yeah.
Right. So because you created those, you already set them up how you want them to appear. So there's no issue there. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just being extra careful when something's imported, making sure that it's.
And it's usually the SPSS files. That's what I've seen happen the most. And it's mainly because the way in which it's imported just doesn't fit with what's called the R base package. And because that's a little bit older package, so it's not always as smart as some of the newer packages.
Okay.
Okay, so in that case, that is all I had for today. I wanted to mainly make sure that we had time for questions and time to make sure. If you get a chance, if you haven't had a chance to fill out the course evaluations, you should have gotten an email Those are due by tomorrow, so if you could fill those out. Please fill those out by tomorrow. And two, if you have any specific feedback or any questions, I know we're going to be online again, unfortunately, for next semester. So if there's anything that was of a particular help to you, I'd love to hear about it for next semester. I'm sure we'll be seeing at least some of you next semester in class. So if you have anything that was really effective or have any needs that you think might help you for next semester, please feel free to email me and let me know that. Otherwise, good luck finishing up. Feel free to, as always, feel free to email me or Danielle. We'd love to help you guys. Sorry this has been such a difficult semester. I know a lot of you have worked very hard. I do want to say one thing. I want to say I'm very proud of you guys. I've been really impressed with how well you guys have picked up on how hard you've worked, how often you have gone above and beyond. And I've been really impressed with you as a group of students. So thank you for being such a great online group. I know this hasn't been what any of us wanted for the semester. I know that, but I really feel like a lot of you learned a lot and you were very impressive. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good luck. Good luck with everything. Stay in touch. Let me know how things are going.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the both of you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Destiny.
I was going to say the same. I was going to say, you guys have been really helpful. I was kind of a little bit intimidated by doing stats online, but you guys are really helpful. So I just wanted to say thank you.
I'm great. Well, thanks. It's been great having you in class.
Thank you.
Brianna, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question, sorry, about my project.